Hello, I'm Claire, and I'm a personal solvency practitioner. Thank you for joining me today to have a talk about reasonable living expenses, understand a little bit about what they are, how they affect you, and why they're really, really important if you're under some financial pressure and if you're looking at options in relation to personal solvency. So what are these reasonable living expenses, or RLEs? Basically, they're a set of costs which have been set and understood to be what's needed for any individual or a person with their family to have a reasonably good standard of living. So they're not poverty level, they're not based on social welfare entitlements, but they're what you would need with your family to spend on a day-to-day basis. So they're enough for you to heat your house, have enough food to eat, buy clothes, go to the doctor, the dentist, bring the kids to the cinema, run your car at a reasonable level, and mean that you are having a reasonably comfortable life, contributing to society, and not feeling that you're in severe financial pressure. So how have these numbers come about? Basically, a couple of organisations have got together, being St Vincent de Paul, the Insolvency Service of Ireland, the Money and Budgeting Advisory Services, and the banks and other stakeholders. They've analysed what it costs an average family to live and created a set of average cost tables for a family. And these tables change depending on if you're a single or a couple, if you have children, what ages they are, if you have one car, if you have two cars. Like I said, they cover the cost of food, light, heat. What they don't cover is the cost of accommodation or rent and the cost of paying down loans, your car finance or credit union, that type of thing. So they're based on literally what you need day to day to live. So the question that usually asks is, how are they calculated? Well, as I said, it's a standard set of cost tables. So they understand how much it costs for an average family. They understand the difference between a person living alone and two people living in a house together. So for example, to heat a 3-bedroom house costs pretty much the same regardless if there's one person in there or a family of 5. Two people living together will cost less to maintain a house than two people living in separate houses. So that's the standard, that's the guideline where we start. Then we understand you. We understand your family and what you need day to day to live. So for example, if somebody's got an underlying medical condition, then the cost of medication, maybe a special dietary requirement, those increase your standard costs. If, for example, you have a medical card, then you won't need to pay usually for medication or doctor's visits, in which case your cost in terms of your medical and your health will actually reduce. It may be a case of you have 2 cars. You may live somewhere that's not accessible to public transport, or one of you is driving to work, the other is driving children to school, in which case the cost of transport will go up. So while we start with a standard set of cost tables, once we understand you and your life and what you need, this becomes a set of costs that's very individual to you and reflects you and your life. So then we wonder, how much are they? Now most people, when they hear about RLEs and insolvency and reasonable living costs, they think, well, they can't possibly be that much. You know, my banks don't want me to have a reasonable life. My banks don't want me to spend money every day. Well, actually, they're probably more generous than you might think. So as I said earlier on, they're designed to let you have a reasonable standard of living, make a positive contribution to society. So nobody really wants you to be sitting at home feeling that you can't go out, living very frugally, and basically simply being in fear of debt. So I've taken a couple of examples in terms of different people and different circumstances to give you an idea of what those costs look like in terms of what we would expect an average person to spend on a day-to-day basis. So if we take a single person with a car, usually we'd expect them to need to spend about $1,050 per month. So that's well above what social welfare income will give you, which is approximately $890. If we take a couple with one primary school child and one secondary school child, well, we all know teenagers eat a lot more than primary school children, then their average day-to-day costs we estimate to be about $2,000. And then finally, a couple with 2 cars, they both need them for travelling every day, and a baby, well, their costs we would expect to be in the region of $1,900. So as you can see, the costs are reasonably generous. Like I said, designed to give you a good level of income, and they vary depending on you, your family, and what you need on a day-to-day basis. So why are these RLEs really important? Well, if you're under financial pressure, if you're struggling to pay your bills, to pay your mortgage and debts and the people that you owe, you need to start with how much do you need to live? So how much do you need for day-to-day expenses? The RLEs, once we tweak them for your family and what you specifically need yourself, give you a number that you start with in terms of what you need day to day. When we compare what you need for day-to-day costs to the income that you have in your household, the amount that's left over then that's the number that we need to understand fully in order to decide how much you can pay your mortgage or the people that you owe money to. So if we go out back to our couple with the 2 cars and the baby, and we say, for example, that they're earning between the two of them a net $3,500 per month coming into their bank account for their wages, we compare that to the ORLEs for them, then what's left over is $1,597. That's the amount of money they have available to spend on their mortgage and making loan payments. So from an insolvency perspective, generally you can't be asked to pay more than you can afford. So back to our couple, that figure is $1,597. We find most people who are in financial distress, who need to access MABs, or a personal insolvency practitioner like myself, because they've been trying to deal with their banks, their creditors, they're under pressure with the phone calls, they end up trying to make the payments to the maximum amount possible that they can, and as a result usually don't leave themselves with enough money to buy food, to heat the house, or new clothes for the kids. So they're living below the reasonable living expenses, and long term, while you might squeeze it out for a couple of months, and a lot of people try and squeeze it out for a couple of years, it doesn't bode well for you, for your mental health, and for how you'd like to live on a day-to-day basis. As I said, the figures in terms of reasonable living costs are above social welfare entitlements, and they're designed to make sure that you can make a positive contribution to society. So if you go to ask advice on this, your insolvency practitioner will advise you on the ORLEs for you and your family, and that will give you an indication of what you can afford to pay. And that will give you an indication on what you can afford to pay in terms of your debt repayments. So what's next? Well, we'd suggest that if you're feeling under financial pressure and you're not really sure where to begin, start by understanding what are the reasonable living expenses for you. There's a calculator on the Back on Track website or the ISI website, and 2 or 3 minutes you run through the size of your family, the structure, childcare costs, and it will give you the number that would be considered reasonable in terms of day-to-day spend. If you're feeling under pressure, then compare that to what you're earning on a month-to-month basis. If what you've left over after your ORLEs is less than what your creditors are asking you to pay them back in terms of debt repayments and mortgage repayments, then usually it's time to ask for help. And in which case you can contact your local money advisory budgeting service, or you can contact somebody like myself, a personal insolvency practitioner. And we focus on helping you deal with your creditors and reaching a situation which is sustainable and affordable for you, based on your income, based on your ORLEs, in terms of your long-term debt payments. So if you'd like to know more, please feel free to email us at pip@cas.ie or pick up the phone and give us a call at 045 432 313. We look forward to hearing from you. And again, my name is Claire. Thank you for watching, and we hope this helps.